But the truth of trading time for money, it was like we were still hustling hard. But when my daughter was born, and so that was a pivotal point for me. My priorities shifted and I wanted to be a good mom. But on the same token, I love my profession. I love my career. I wanted to be able to do both well and have more flexibility and time. And that's when we ventured into the world of learning more about real estate investing and how can we work smarter and how can we grow our wealth better through the vehicle of real estate.
Welcome to the American Dream Builder and Investor podcast, where our vision is to inspire busy professionals, especially first and second generation immigrants and Americans, to explore the state of the American dream in 2022 and beyond. That is the Trinity of Freedom: time, financial, and geography freedom. I'm your host, Missy Liu, and I have achieved financial independence and I'm helping many others to do the same. I started out with $5,000 and have really built wealth for my family along the process. Now I'm on a mission to help hundreds of thousands of people like me to do the same.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of the American Dream Builder and Investor podcast. I'm your host, Missy Liu. In today's episode, we're going to talk about Dr. Hua Wen, her entrepreneur side of the story, from how she started as an immigrant raised by a single mother to an entrepreneur running two successful eye practices and a successful real estate investment firm along with her spouse. We're going to dive into the entrepreneurial spirit that she has, what has made her so successful, and some of the growth mindsets she had. I believe those mindsets she shared will help you grow as a passive or active investor, will just help you in your freedom journey in general. So let's dive into the episode. So welcome, Dr. Hua Wen. I'll just call her Hua in the in the conversations.
Yes, just call me.
But I felt like I need to put a doctor in there just to showcase the amount of work you have put in there through all your schoolwork and what you do. We talked about this right before. You are a first-generation immigrant. You came here to the U.S. with your family when you were young. Today, we'll focus a lot more on your entrepreneurship journey and investing journey and provide inspiration and maybe practical tips to others. But starting out, maybe tell us about your immigrant story to the U.S., how that has played a huge factor in your personal and professional success today.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for having me on, Macy. Time flies, but I was born in the Philippines. So my parents fled Vietnam after the war. And so I was born in the Philippines in the refugee camp in Manila. And then we moved around a lot. And so I came to the United States when I was about 8.5 years old and have two older brothers. And the five of us, it was really hard, like just financially. My parents started off working as janitors. And so at a very young age of 10 years old, I started working. And so a little convenience store, we settled in New Orleans. And so I started working as a young entrepreneur to help my mom and my dad work the kitchen, do the cash register. Like I can really work the kitchen doing egg rolls, like anything in the kitchen space. I'm really good at it. And so the work ethic was instilled in me really early on, but I also saw the financial hardships our family went through and my dad passing away at a young age when I was 13. And so I've always had to work and help my mom because my mom was never allowed to go to school. And so she didn't speak English. She didn't know how to drive. She never was allowed to go to school. And so it was just putting in hard work. And so that really gave me that drive that really to do well and help in whatever ways I could. And so academically and I always had that entrepreneurial spirit from my mom because she started businesses in New Orleans, not knowing English and not having any formal education and just having me help her. And so, that kind of gave me the drive to do well and want to go to school and become a doctor. And the end goal was to be my own boss still. Even as a doctor, I wanted to have my own practice. And that was really the journey of entrepreneurship. And so that was a hard journey, just going through that, being first generation, going to college, going to, being a doctor. And then graduating and working and hustling. I mean, I worked and hustled 7 days a week for most of my life to acquire practices and things of that. I worked for 4.5 years for someone else before we were able to purchase our first practice.
Yeah, I remember a Facebook post about you, still driving your car with, I think, 100,000 mileage and etc. And those are the same things that we do because, to us, a car is just a motor vehicle, and it's important to put the money into places where it matters, whether it's investment, giving back to communities or your family. And I really admire your mother for, raising you guys without a spouse and helping you guys physically, mentally, spiritually, financially to get you there. She's probably one of the, we usually have the saying that behind a strong woman, there is like, behind a strong man, there is like a woman like supporting him or something. That I feel like in this case, it's a mom pouring into you guys. And I can, yeah, and I can attest to that. Being an immigrant, we've coming from different backgrounds, whether it's freedom, not having choices, like in China, to things where government, chaotic situations across other countries, wars. We feel coming here made it, it's like stepping into streets paved with gold. So I'm glad that you grabbed onto the opportunity and made something for yourself and your family. Yeah, that's really impressive.
Yeah.
And going from there, your experiences as doctors, how has that paved your way into investing?
Yeah. And so working, as doctors and even going through all the formal education, you're really not taught entrepreneurship. You're really not taught money and the financial aspects of how to build wealth. That's just something that's not really truly taught in our school systems. And so our own journey when we were doctors, we thought our end goal was to own our own practices. And the truth of the matter is, we graduated with $350,000 of student loan debt, and even acquiring our own practices, we were still putting in, 60 hours a work week on average, just building that up. And so trading time for money. And we didn't know any other investing vehicles at the time, except for our 401k and stocks and bonds, kind of like typically what's in the mainstream, what we're taught. And so that's where we parked our money when we started making some income from our practices. But the truth of trading time for money, it was like we were still hustling hard. But when my daughter was born, like it took us a long time to actually have my daughter, Athena. And so that was a pivotal point for me because I really, really wanted to be a mom. And so my priorities shifted and I wanted to be a good mom. But on the same token, I love my profession. I love my career. I wanted to be able to do both well and have more flexibility and time. And that's when we ventured into the world of learning more about real estate investing and how can we work smarter and how can we grow our wealth better through the vehicle of real estate. But that was, my daughter was born in 2014, and that's when we started learning about different assets in real estate.
I see. Sounds like you went from one entrepreneurship endeavor to another one, although a lot of it is also passive investing. I know that your mom set you with good examples about entrepreneurship. I'm sure she also showed you how tough it can be having to do so many things on your own. So, what are some of the tough lessons you learned as an entrepreneur, whether it's in the eye practices or the investing side today?
Yeah. And so when I first started our own practice as an entrepreneur, I took on a lot of all the roles. I pretty much do A to Z in every business. I want to learn and do the very detailed work, the minutia that most doctors don't do in a practice. Because for me, the business, I want to be able to understand and physically do the business to efficiently train my staff. And so I took on a lot of the things that I could have hired and delegated, and I didn't do that till much later. And so in hindsight, I think in order to grow and scale my business, I probably could have spent my time wiser, hiring the help that I needed earlier on. And so early in my career, from everything from our housework to our businesses, like I did everything and hired very minimal people. In our practice, we had 3 people. And I pretty much was doing everything from insurance to the laboratory, from the medical side to the optical side. And so every part of the business, I was very hands on, deep diving, doing the heavy lifting work. And so one of the things I would encourage moving forward and how I've been able to pivot to free up my time is really hiring the help and training them properly. earlier on to take those tasks that I can have someone help me so that I can utilize my time on better things where I can scale my business more efficiently. And that's in the real estate space too. At the beginning, I was doing everything with I'm fortunate that Jaime, he's my husband, but also my business partner in everything we do. He helps a lot. We have different complementary skill sets. But again, we were both doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So now we've learned to delegate and hire good help um, that are even better than a lot of the things that we are not as detailed and good at. We hire the proper help that are complementary skill sets and just train them properly the way we want it done.
Yeah.
And so that has been a challenge. Before was that was the time factor as we were doing it.
Yeah, it's easy to become a owner or business owner and put that as a full-time job and really not getting your time back. That's why the part about passive investing being so important. But what about the people who either started a business that doesn't have the money to hire someone or feel like they don't have the money to hire someone? Was that the situation in your case? Because I struggled with that at the beginning, and then I just shifted my priorities and started hiring people somewhat early on, knowing that I have to set a foundation for scalable success.
Yeah, so at the beginning when we didn't have the money to do that, that's why we were doing a lot of that. But then in hindsight, if you look at the hourly of what you can pay versus what your time is worth and what you can do to create more income streams, I mean, obviously our time as a whole, we can do a lot more valuable and bring in more resources and income to pay for that individual. And so it was a little bit of a scarcity mindset. And so being able to now hire on the help or thinking that you do it best, where you're like, no one can really do it better. Can I trust someone to take on that task? And it was a limiting mindset because I didn't believe anybody could. I was just like, I know I do this really well. I don't think somebody else is going to be able to do that. Can I trust them to do that well? And so that is a part at the beginning, even if you're owned by yourself, if you're not able to hire help yet, still you have to prioritize and plan the best use of your time because you can easily get into the rabbit hole of busy and just do things instead of like, what are 3 to 5 things that are really going to move the needle for my business?
Yeah, that makes sense. Understanding the value of your time and use that to kind of force yourself to make that decision. And so from that experience, one thing that you just mentioned that really resonated with me was about the scarcity mindset. And we actually did some solo episodes on that, maybe the first 3 or 4 episodes. That was a big factor for me, even scarcity about money, understanding the abundance of money, just about things falling to the right places and we being at the right time with the right skill set to accomplish it. Did you have to overcome some of those scarcity mindset as you were growing in the entrepreneurship journey? Because when I came to the US, my goals was like so big. Now I look at it, I'm like, oh, I don't even know if I can accomplish that, but I didn't know. So I just set huge goals. But how about you? What mindset did you overcome?
This podcast is sponsored by Life Mission Capital, founded by me, Missy Liu, where my life mission is to help busy professionals invest well so they can focus on what matters. All my life, I was taught to study and work hard for my freedom. Until one day, I realized that unless I let my money work hard for me, I will always be trading my most precious resource, time, for freedom. Since then, we have also been helping our investors passively diversify into more than 1,000 units of recession and inflation-resistant alternative investments, such as multifamily, mobile home parks, short-term rentals, and more. Learn more with our free ebooks at lifemissioncapital.com.
Yeah, it took me my growth journey was a little slow in opening my mind because honestly, through my formal education of college in optometry school, I was pretty close-minded. Even through with my practice, I was still close-minded to the world of other avenues. And so the world of real estate, once I ventured into that and just meeting different people out of my normal circle of friends and colleagues, was really eye-opening. And so what I even envisioned and dreamed before, now I look back and I'm like, my dream wasn't all that big when I was younger. I was just like, okay, I'd be super happy if I make 6 digits, like an income. If I can hit $100,000 and have my own practice, I'm set. That was when I was younger, I was like, man, that would be the dream. And now it's not so much the monetary, it's just the level of fulfillment and doing what I enjoy doing and having that flexibility and like giving back. But it took a journey of like, man, that was a huge my past, I would say my last 5 to 6 years has been my biggest growth journey and just opening my mind and meeting new people because I wasn't even open to meeting new people and going to networking events or conferences. Like that was not my cup of tea. I'm super shy and introverted by nature. And so that was a huge growth journey for me to be comfortable enough to get myself out there. I'm very private in nature. And so now, the past few years, being on stage and speaking and sharing my story, like that is a whole 180 of who I was growing up for the longest time until just recently, a few years ago.
Hmm.
But the abundance, the shift of mindset of like, hey, I want to share with people, right? And especially adversity and sharing challenges because it can help somebody else, you know?
Hmm.
And a lot of people share that. I'm like, yeah, because I was like, yeah, my life journey was not perfect by any means. And it was very challenging, but those challenges molded us to where we became today, right? And so sharing that with others does help them. And what are the things and tips and resources that help? And so that's why that mindset shift, and I'm always growing and learning. And so I never look at something like, oh, just because I've hit a certain number that I've made it or I know it. No, by any means. The more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. And so I'm always in learning and growth mode, always, you know.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, when you talk about your hardships, just reminded me something that I read online from Barbara Cochran, the lady from Shark Tank. And she said something about how she select her entrepreneurs to work with is she actually tend to select people who has experienced hardships, who has experienced tough childhood, not a wealthy background, because those are the people who know how to overcome those and who know how to do it better. So you're definitely an example of that. And going back to what you said about yourself from being introvert to extrovert, sharing on stages and sharing those stories, was there a pivotal point in your life that forced you to make that choice? Or did someone inspire you to do that? Because sometimes we're just one step away from that aha moment. And then from there, it's just rinse and repeat.
Yeah. I think it helps having a lot of the positive feedback from people. When I first stepped foot on stage, I mean, my biggest fear has always been fear of public speaking. I'm terrified. I had a business coach and he was always like, your story's too big to play small, you know, and he was just like, you should be on stage sharing your story. And I remember telling him, never, never, never. Like, why would I do that? I have no desire to speak. And he would kind of push me indirectly. He's like, be part of the panel. And he'll ask me questions and he'll just indirectly give me speaking opportunities, small, little one here and there. And I think the pivotal aha moment was when I stepped off of that stage. And I remember one particular, the first time I was on stage, it was a Vegas stage. It had about 400 people. I was terrified. And I stepped down, and a young Vietnamese girl came over. She's probably early 20s. And she cried, and she was just like, you don't normally see Asian women on stage doing what you do and just speaking. And you're so, you so inspire me to step out of my shell. And like, I just cried, and I was like, it's almost like it's not about me anymore. And I kept having that back to back. And so that day, I probably had about 15 people come up and just hug me and share. And it was really inspiring. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that really made a difference, you know? And I think that was kind of my fuel of like, okay, it did make an impact for somebody. And they keep in touch with me still, you know, they're like now, and then I see the direct impact because people who were shy, now I see them out there speaking. I see them in the real estate space. I see them moving up and leveling up. And they're just like, man, Hua, you've inspired me to step up. And so I see these direct people that tell me, and I see them now doing the same. And they're in the real estate, or even if they're not in the real estate, they're on stages, they're sharing their story, they're getting out there, breaking out of their shell. And so I see the direct impact of what I am doing. And that's why I continue it.
I can definitely attest to that. I think you have been an inspiration for me as well, even from a first encounter. And I had similar experiences. I started a commercial real estate meetup in our area. Basically, like 99% of the people in commercial real estate are men. So when I step up there, and sometimes there are ladies come up and they were like, oh, well, thank you for doing that. I didn't think it was possible for me. And now I feel I can do it too. So definitely examples are more
So proud of
powerful.
you. I know I've seen you out there and I'm like, look at you.
Yeah.
You've been growing a lot and getting out there. So this is great.
Yeah. Thank you, Hua. Thank you for your inspiration. And examples are powerful. Examples as parents, as mentors. So thank you for setting that example out there for people. Definitely appreciate it.
Thank you. Same for you as well.
Yeah. Now, with your story, there's another part I'm very interested in terms of your growth is you and your partner, your business partner, and also your spouse. How were you guys able to always be on the same page or try to help each other be on the same page on your entrepreneurship, investing, financial journey? Because our listeners, they may be active investors, they may be passive investors, they may have a spouse, or people in their life that they really care about that has a different mindset about money. It's hard to push that needle sometimes or make them feel like less valued if you don't tell them the message the right way. So how have you guys been able to come to the same space? Were you guys always just, on the same page?
No, no. Jaime and I couldn't be more different. Like, we're completely polar opposites. I mean, we've been together for 18 years. And so it has to be very intentional and being honest and open of what works and what doesn't work, what you like and what you don't like. And so communication is key. Are you going to hurt each other's feelings sometimes? Is it always rosy? No. But I think for us, it's key. For us, it's always been take care of yourself first, be really intentional of being the best version of yourself, and then coming together. Like at the core, I always say family first. And so for us, business is part of it, but for us to be good in general first is super important. And so we continue dating each other. It's funny because people are like, that's your husband, but you call him lover. I'm like, yeah, I've called him lover since I met him 18 years ago, and he's still my lover. And so, we make it very intentional that our relationship comes first. And so we date each other. We don't get into the world of busy because there's always tons of things to do. But whether we were poor, whether we have something, whether we have our businesses, it doesn't matter. At the core, we always want to make sure that, are you good? Are you happy? Is there something that I can do to help? And so that's always a constant communication that we work on. And once we have that good, then we start on the business. Like in our real estate business or our eye care practices, what are things that you're strong at, that you like to do, that you enjoy, that you want to take on and you prioritize and you're in charge of that? And the same thing with me and for both of our business. So it's important for us to be able to do what we're good at and what we enjoy. And then what we don't want to do, if each other can't do it, then we hire the rest if both of us aren't filling the gap. And so it's constant. And as we're growing and scaling, that's even more important that we have a pulse of communication and coordinating calendars, coordinating events, coordinating our fun. And so it's all planned in and it has to be intentional. And then we do our travel vacation time, because if you don't plan in the fun and it's all work, then it's like it's just your business partner or you're just living together, So you have to have that dating, the fun, and integrate it into the business aspect.
Oh, that's great. Looking at each other's strength is a great way to go about it. But have you always been on the same page about where you want to go in terms of your time freedom, financial freedom? Or how do you, kind of work
No,
together?
so I remember Jaime just wanting to scale practices because that's obviously the space that we're well versed in. We're eye doctors, right? And so my goal at the time was like 2 practices with my end goal for practices. I'm like, you take charge of one, I take charge of one. That way we have a good pulse of what's going on with the practices. And then he kept wanting to scale, and we were already working about 60 hours a week at this point, right? And so he kept looking at new land. He wanted to build a new practice and kind of do our own practice and do 3 or 4 or 5 and just scaling that way. And I was like, absolutely not. And then, he got to a point where he kept looking, and I'm like, look, I'm not looking because I don't look. If I look, I'm buying. Like, I'm not looking just to waste time because I have no desire for a third practice. And then again, when my daughter was born, I was like, okay, if we want to scale and we want to do other things, then we need to venture into real estate and look at other avenues and learn that aspect. And so Jaime was on board. Like when he finally was like, okay, so absolutely no more practices. I'm like, I'm not on board. Like if you're going to buy anything else, you're going to run it by yourself. I'm going to have nothing to do with it. I don't want my name on it. I'm not going to come visit it. I'm not going to do anything with it, you know? And so that was a point where he was just like, okay, we got to pivot. And so it took some time for us to both be on page with the real estate ventures. And then once we got into agreeing with the real estate space, he was actually the one who got us into the multifamily space, because when we first started off, we were doing other asset classes and venturing and learning together. But he was the one who got us into the multifamily space, which I was like, that's way out of our league. I'm like, we were looking for individual things. We did not know about syndication at the time. I was like, we can't afford multifamily big spaces. I mean, the most we could probably do at that time was like maybe 4 or 8 units or 12 units or something where we can buy it by ourselves. But when we learned about the multifamily syndication space, and Jaime was like, we should attend this seminar and boot camp. And I'm like, oh, they're all scams, you know? And that was my mindset at the beginning. Like, I was just like, no, it sounds too good to be true. Like, they're just trying to scam us into something. But that took some time for me to be like, okay, let me really talk to people in the space. What is their background? What has their journey been? And so the more that I talked to people who were actively in the space successfully, and they come from all walks of life and all sorts of background, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is real. And that's where, where both of us got on board together more into the real estate space, because I was still a little skeptical, even though I wanted to get into the real estate space. It was just a trial and error learning, and then starting to join different groups and learning the process and things.
Yeah, I mean, that would be ideal, but it's a work in progress for most couples. The important thing I learned from your conversation is to be patient, to work with the other person and bring them along the journey you want to go on, and be patient and respectful. Those are the key.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So were you or Jaime, were you both into business coaching? Because you mentioned about going from being the medical school, they didn't teach you about any of the stuff. So you got business coach and real estate coaches. Were you always big into coaches? How has that helped you in your journey?
Never had coaches prior to getting into this world of our next growth journey, And so when we started getting into learning more about real estate, and we started getting into the Tony Robbins world, so self-development and just broadening your mindset, and then we got a life coach in that world. And then we got into the real estate space, and then we hired mentors and coaches in the real estate space. And then even in our fitness and health, we started hiring coaches. So every avenue of our life that we wanted to improve, we hired a coach. And it moved the needle.
You did. Okay, awesome. Yeah. So you said that it moved the needle for you, and I really believe coaches are great resources as well. It took me a few months after we met, and then I hired on coaches as well. So how do you justify the coaches? How do you select them and really make sure you're getting a good return on your investment? I think that's also a critical thing in your journey, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I continue to have different mentors, lots of different coaches in different lanes of my life. And they all help in different areas. And so I seek out specific coaches who are successfully doing exactly what I want to do in that space. And so if I want to improve on public speaking, I hire a coach for that. If I want to improve in real estate, especially multifamily, I hire a mentor or a coach for that. If I want to hire, it's like for fitness, then do they fit the lifestyle and the fitness that I want to pursue, then I hire someone for that. And so it's very specific, because I don't want a general coach coaching me on all sorts of different things, and it's multiple lane, but it's not actionable. I want them to give me a handheld process. Give me the minutia, give me the granular, so I can actually take on, learn, and do it myself. And so for me, it's very specific. I don't want a general coach in anything. I want it very specific. I want to help me improve in this particular lane. And I need you to share the very well resources and hold me accountable. So I want a one-on-one coach who will talk to me on a weekly basis or monthly basis, or I can have access to text, or I can have access to a community. And they have students already successfully doing it. And that's how I pick them, Because if they don't have a track record, or they don't have people in their ecosystem that can vouch for them, that I can see a success record, then I probably look for another one. Because then I'm like, well, does that person have experience coaching or mentoring? And do they have successful students? Successful students who refer or highly recommend is the best way for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you, Hua. Thank you so much for being with us today and talking about your stories going from a immigrant family into the U.S., escaping from the wars in Vietnam, and coming to the U.S. and raised by a single mom to become a successful medical professional, a doctor, owning 2 eye doctor offices along with your spouse, sharing all the nuggets about not just growing personally, but also grow with your spouse as a couple, and how you're gaining fitness across your finances, across your personal side, just overall, learning how to find coaches as well. I think those are really helpful nuggets that can help others grow in many areas, whether they're passive investors or active investors or people who are just having a W-2 job, which is a lot of us these days. So thank you so much for sharing with us. Now, our next episode will also have Dr. Hua Wen, and I just call her Hua, in our podcast. And we will be talking about her investing journey, how she has gone from passive investing to active investing, and some of the important lessons she learned along the way that has really helped pivot her investing journey. So see you on the next episode.
Thank you so much for tuning in to the American Dream Builder and Investor podcast with me, Missy Liu. We hope you enjoy the tips and tricks that others have used to build their American dream and their trinity of freedom. We would love for you to subscribe and leave a rating and a review. You can also find all the episodes and details on lifemissioncapital.com. Until then, let your life mission go wild.